He stood at the grand entrance of the ballroom, heart racing with anticipation. Everything had been planned to perfection. Crystal chandeliers hung like constellations overhead, casting a soft glow on the polished marble floors. Tables draped in pristine white linens were set with gleaming silverware and sparkling glassware. Floral arrangements in pastel hues adorned every corner, and the gentle strains of a string quartet filled the air with romance. He adjusted his cufflinks, a final check of his tailored tuxedo, and took a slow breath. This was his moment. Mirror, 42, he had built his empire from the ground up. Tonight, he would marry the woman he loved. Yet, as he took that breath, his mind drifted to the real reason he had pushed himself so hard. His daughter, Emma. Emma was 5, a bright-eyed whirlwind of energy and curiosity. From the moment she learned to talk, she had peppered him with questions about his work. How do you build a skyscraper? What makes a bank? Why do you travel so much? He answered as best he could, but often found himself distracted, his mind turning back to spreadsheets, board meetings, and quarterly reports. He prided himself on providing her with every material comfort, luxury toys, couture dresses, private tutors, but he rarely provided the one thing she needed most: his time. He glanced toward the back of the room, where servers in crisp uniforms moved like silent specters attending to last-minute details. That's when he saw her. Emma, her golden curls bound in a neat ribbon, crouched beside one of the long banquet tables. She held a small cloth napkin in her chubby hand, wiping crumbs from the tabletop with painstaking care. Her little dress was smudged at the hem, and her tiny shoes peeked out from beneath it. She was cleaning tables at her father's wedding. His breath caught in his throat. He stood frozen, watching as she knelt on the soft carpet, determined to make every surface spotless. A server passed by and gently guided her aside, but she shook her head, crawling around to reach another spot. He felt a knot form in his chest, a mixture of pride and guilt. Pride that she was so thoughtful, so eager to help. Guilt that she had taken it upon herself to tend to the details he should have noticed and handled. He moved toward her, every step heavy with emotion. As he drew near, she looked up, her big blue eyes meeting his. She smiled shyly, holding out the napkin as if offering it for inspection. He knelt down to her level, the sharp click of his shoes on marble echoing in the stillness. He took the napkin and gently placed it back on the table, his hand brushing against hers. At that moment, the world seemed to shrink to the space between them, the wedding guests and opulence fading into the background. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" he asked softly, his voice thick. "I'm helping," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want everything to be perfect for you and Mommy." He swallowed hard, the lump in his throat making it hard to speak. "You don't have to help," he said. "You're too little." She shook her head with conviction. "I can help. I want to." He reached out and tucked a stray curl behind her ear, his fingers lingering as if reluctant to let go. "Thank you," he said, his voice trembling. "But I want you to go find your mother. She's waiting for you." She glanced over her shoulder toward the center of the ballroom, where his bride stood, resplendent in ivory lace. The woman he had courted across continents, who had stood by him through boardroom battles and sleepless nights. She smiled at Emma, beckoning her with an outstretched hand. Emma hesitated, glancing back at him as though torn between two worlds. Then she nodded, rose to her feet, and scampered toward her mother, her small hands slipping into her mother's as they walked together. He watched them disappear into the crowd, then stood and let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His heart felt full and heavy at once. He straightened, smoothed his jacket, and turned back toward the room, toward his future wife. Yet everything felt different now. The perfectly arranged tables, the orchestra, even the guests. Polite applause seemed insignificant compared to the sight of his daughter trying to clean up for him. Memories flooded him unbidden, the late nights he'd missed her bedtime stories. The plane rides when she had woken, calling for him only to find an empty seat. The phone calls in his office, eyes on the ticker, while she asked about her drawings. He had always told himself that he was doing it for her, to give her a life of privilege, to ensure her future was secure. But seeing her 5-year-old hands determined to help her father, he realized that what she really needed was his presence. He walked slowly to where the string quartet played, the notes drifting around him like promises. His best man approached, ready to toast, but he waved him off with a polite smile. He needed a moment to gather himself, to shake free of the roles he had played for so long. The millionaire, the CEO, the provider. He needed to be a father. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice carried across the hushed room, firm yet unsteady. Thank you all for being here on this special day. Before I join my beautiful bride at the altar, there's something I need to say. Whispers rippled through the crowd. He searched the room for his daughter's face. There she was, perched at her mother's side, her small hand holding a delicate rose bouquet. He felt his pulse quicken. This wedding means more to me than any business deal, more than any achievement I've ever had. He took a steadying breath. It's not about the flowers, the decor, or even the vows we'll exchange. It's about family. He paused, folding his hands in front of him. The quartet's last note lingered in the air. I've spent my life chasing success, building an empire, striving to provide the best for my wife and daughter. And tonight I realized something very important. No matter how grand my accomplishments, none of it matters if I'm not present for the people I love. He felt tears prick at his eyes. A few guests dabbed their own eyes with handkerchiefs. Emma, come here. His wife's surprised expression gave way to a gentle smile as their daughter toddled forward. He knelt once more, opening his arms. She ran into them and he lifted her up, feeling the warmth of her small body against his chest. You're my greatest achievement, he whispered into her hair. I promise you from this moment forward I will always be here for you. She looked up at him, her face serious as if she understood the gravity of his words. Always. Always, he echoed, his voice unwavering. He stood, holding her in his arms, and turned to his bride. She stepped forward, slipping her arm around his waist. He placed Emma on her hip, feeling the weight of responsibility and love in perfect balance. Together, they walked down the aisle toward the waiting officiant, the guests rising to their feet in a wave of applause. But for him, the only sound that mattered was the soft giggle of his daughter as she curled into him, her little hand brushing against the lace of his bride's gown. The vows they exchanged were heartfelt. He spoke of love, commitment, and partnership, but in his heart, every word was suffused with the promise he had just made to his daughter. When they kissed, the room erupted in cheers, confetti raining down like colorful petals. Yet all he saw was Emma's upturned face, her eyes shining with pride. The reception that followed was lively, but he stayed close to his family. He danced with his wife under the chandelier, then lifted Emma onto the dance floor for a waltz of their own. She giggled as he spun her, her twirling skirt a blur of ivory and pink. They paused when he felt a tap on his shoulder. It was his best friend, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The man had learned what truly mattered. Later, as the night wound down and the guests drifted away, he found a quiet corner of the terrace overlooking the gardens. The moon cast silver light across the fountains, and the jasmine-scented air was cool against his skin. Emma sat beside him on a bench, her small legs dangling. She nestled against him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Daddy," she said, her voice soft. "Thank you for helping me." He smiled, kissing the top of her head. "Thank you for helping me understand what matters most." She yawned, heavy-lidded now, and he scooped her into his arms. Carrying her back inside, he felt a sense of peace settle over him, a peace he hadn't known in years. He realized that wealth and success paled in comparison to moments like this, simple yet profound. That night he lay beside his wife, Emma asleep between them. He watched his daughter's peaceful face, her tiny chest rising and falling. He traced the curve of her cheek with his fingertip and vowed silently to never let his ambitions overshadow his love for her. In that moment, he was not just a millionaire, not just a CEO. He was a father, and that title was the one he cherished above all. Morning light filtered through the curtains, and Emma stirred, blinking sleep from her eyes. She looked at him and smiled. He returned her smile, lifting her in a playful swoop. "Good morning, my princess," he said. "Good morning, Daddy," she replied, yawning again. He held her close, savoring the simplicity of the moment. No boardrooms, no strategies, just the warmth of his daughter's embrace. He set her down and watched as she ran to the window, pressing her nose to the glass and marveling at the dew-kissed roses outside. He joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Shall we go see Mommy?" he asked. She nodded, and they walked back into the room hand in hand. His wife greeted them with a smile and a kiss, and for the first time, the three of them stood together. They make family.